You're listening to Making a Living Show. I'm Roby Levy.
Hey, I'm JJ Whitehead, and I make people laugh for a living, mostly.
Originally from Nova Scotia, Canada, comedian JJ Whitehead got his start doing stand-up in Scotland and went on to become a veteran of the British comedy circuit. These days, he's living in LA and writing on The Jim Jeffries Show on Comedy Central. His new album, Live Before Lockdown, is available now on iTunes. Here's my chat with JJ Whitehead. Who are you, and what do you make for a living?
Oh, what do I create? That could so easily just be interpreted as how much money. I just want to know what you make.
And the show's over.
So I'm JJ Whitehead. I'm a comedian and a writer, and so I make little comedy shows, and I perform live stand-up routines that I make myself.
So how'd you get started doing this?
I started in another country. I am actually from Canada, but I started in Scotland, in a comedy club, in a stand-up comedy club, in Edinburgh, in Scotland. I was backpacking and always wanted to try stand-up, and there I was in Scotland trying new things, discovering myself, shall we say. And I started doing comedy at the local comedy club, and I ended up not leaving Scotland and just falling in love with stand-up, and then the writing and other opportunities come through that.
I got to ask about the first time you got up, though. Like, you just did it on a whim?
It wasn't a whim. It was something that I always wanted to do, actually. But when the you carry around these passions or these desires, these things that you want to do, but you don't know when the opportunity is going to arise. And honestly, at that point in my life, I was 21. I knew I wanted to try stand-up, but for some reason, the Canadian in me thought I have to move to Toronto someday. If I'm going to try stand-up, in Toronto, that's the only way to do it, right? As a Canadian. But there I was in Scotland, and it didn't even dawn on me. Oh yeah, there's a whole stand-up comedy culture here, and I'm doing my little, hooray, find yourself Canadian years. So, so why don't I go for this here?
And you decided, I'm just walking around here with a tight 10 in my pocket, and I'm going to get up and I'm just going to let her rip.
Oh yeah. Well, you definitely don't think that. I went I went to a show there. So I was staying at a hostel, being the good backpacker I am. I'm staying in this hostel in Edinburgh. And one night, I think a bunch of us from the hostel decided, well, let's go to this comedy show. We got free tickets. So that's how I found the club in the first place. And it was this gorgeous, the stand comedy club was lovely. In Edinburgh, just a tiny comedy club in terms of all of them. It's probably like 120 seats at best. And then I couldn't believe it. And then they said at the end of the show, if you're interested in trying, come and say hi to us, and we'll see about getting you on stage. And so I came back like the next day, and I signed up. They wanted you to do classes and stuff if you finished their 8-week program. But to my recollection, I only did it for like 2 weeks, and they gave me 5 minutes on a Friday night. She was like, I think you can do this. I think you got 5 minutes. So she did. They put me straight on to like open spot, level, and gave me 5 minutes on a Friday. And then yeah, slowly that grows. And that's how it works. Like then 4 months later, they go, oh, we think you're good enough to do 10 now. We'll graduate you from 5 to 10. And then when another comedy club hears that, like a comedy club in Glasgow, I believe they heard me, and they said, I'll pay you 50 pounds for your 10 minutes. So then all of a sudden you're going through as this new act to do your little 10 minutes. And then your original home club that you started at starts paying you for your 10s. And it sort of slowly spirals from there. Then eventually, somebody gives you 20 on a Thursday, and then another club will give you 20 on a whole weekend. And they keep building up, and before you know it, you're doing it every weekend at different clubs all around Britain.
Were you working with a bunch of friends? Were there other buddies that were doing this as well?
I did. I started with another comedian called Dougie Dunlop. He and I, he's a Scottish comic. He and I moved to London together a couple years into our stand-up, so we were still really new, Yeah, his name was Dougie Dunlop, so Scottish guy. Moved to London, and then when I was in London, our little group grew. We had like a 4-bedroom house, and we slowly grew. We added a couple of Aussies. We had Steve Hughes and another guy called Jim Jeffries, who's hopefully gonna make it someday.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, and so you form your little comedy group. You all live together. Yeah, Jim Jeffries, Steve Hughes, and myself. We moved to Manchester about about 4 years into our careers as well. We left London because we were now at the point where we thought we were getting paid, but we weren't higher echelon comics. So we were making a living, but our standard of living in London was still low. And so we noticed it was cheaper to live in Manchester. So we made the decision to move to Manchester so we could have a better standard of living while the clubs kept growing. And then eventually we did move back to London because we could afford that cost of living more.
What was going on that enabled you to go back? Was it just better bookings or higher profile?
Yeah, I think I mean, there's a whole scale. Like, there's lots of little independent clubs all over Britain, and I'm sure this must be the case everywhere. But when you're at that level, you're getting paid like £80 a show. Let's say $100 a show and stuff. But the big clubs, like Comedy Stores, like there's clubs that are bigger chains, like a Comedy Store, or there's a club called Jongleurs in Britain at the time. There's Glee clubs. The club I started at, the Stand, they all pay more. Like the Caliber is a bit higher. They'll pay like, let's say £200, which is probably close to $300 or whatever for a set. So once you got a lot of those, once you've been working enough and established yourself enough to be at those clubs, then you're making a higher income, so you can afford a better standard of living or a more expensive standard of living. So you move back to London. It just frames it that way. I mean, Manchester's great though. Manchester is in the middle of the country, so you can get to every city no matter where you're working. We actually loved living in Manchester for playing the comedy circuit more than we loved living in London. Because you got all these cities of millions of people within an hour from each other. They're not spread out like Canada and America. You can literally go from a city of 3 million in Liverpool to a city of 2 million, say Manchester, and then down to Birmingham, which is another 3.5 million. Or there's stand-up comedy clubs everywhere.
So how did you develop your set? Like, how did you know you were any good, and who was giving you feedback? Is this you and the buddies that you're living with?
Well, I mean, the great thing about stand-up is that the audience gives you immediate feedback of whether or not you're sucking. I think you write with your friends. You joke around with your friends. But mostly, I think when you're a newer comic, you just have that motivation, and with your friends, with your group of friends, you all share that interest. So you all want to be at the open mic nights. You'll all be at those clubs. In London in particular, there's a different club every night that had a new act night. So all the fresh-faced new wannabe comics would be, that you'd be at the Comedy Cafe on a Wednesday night. You'd be at Cosmic Comedy in West London on a Tuesday night for the Cosmic competition. You'd be at the Backyard on a Thursday night. Anyway, you're at different clubs where all the new faces are, because they'll all put it's new comedy competition night or whatever. They'll put on all these new comics for 3 to 4 minutes at a time or whatever.
Is it just a sign up thing? Like, you show up at a certain time, you sign up, or do you have to actually get booked?
It depends on the popularity of the new act competitions at the time. Like, it was a very popular when I was coming through. So you had to book in about 3 weeks, maybe a month in advance to get a spot. But having like 5 of those, at least 5 really popular ones in London, meant all these new comics were getting up on stage all the time.
Do you win the night? Is there prizes? Is there money? Is that kind of the gist of it?
Usually it's the same kind of thing. Like, if you win, if it's a club that you're doing these, say the Comedy Cafe, they have this new act competition on a Wednesday night. If you win, they would probably offer you like 10 minutes on a Saturday or something. They'd probably go, okay, now you can graduate to that level. Let's see how you do on a Saturday. And if they're disappointed with you, then they ask you to go back into the competition. But if they like your 10 minutes, then they go, hey, we might have you back in about 3 months to do another 10 minutes. And you just keep going. And then hopefully you can leverage that. You go, hey, the Comedy Cafe has me on 10 minutes. How about you guys get me on 10 minutes?
So you're doing all of your own bookings at that point. You're the one reaching out.
I got signed in like 2000. So I got signed like when I moved down to London. I got signed up by companies, so they started taking over a lot of my bookings. I graduated quickly to full sets, like 20 minutes. And all at the smaller clubs, definitely, like headlining the smaller clubs, and then all the big ones were just starting to get me in there rotation. Like the Comedy Store in London is the big, that's the one that you want, and that's 5 headlining comics, but usually they're all quite experienced. There's not a lot of fluff coming out of them. So that's the upper echelon that you want to join. You want to get amongst those 5 comics that'll be doing that bill on the weekend at the Comedy Store. And when you're newer, they'll give you a little spot in the middle to help you out, the soft spot.
It seems like you had a lot of positive response and early success in terms of getting into this world and into this system, and you had a support network, you had your buddies around you, but this isn't easy. I mean, how did you stay motivated when you get 10 minutes at one place and then?
Well, it was also all that I had. So that was one of the other advantages of starting in a different country, because I would imagine if I had, so my original dream as a Canadian was like, someday I got to move to the big city of Toronto, maybe Montreal, I don't know, but someplace that I know has stand-up comedy, because I'd like to try it. And in order to get all those things to align, I bet you I probably would have had a different job. Maybe I would have become, I studied health professions, so maybe I would have worked, in a, I don't know, or worked for a sports team or something in their health department, or whatever was my kind of
the backup.
It was a B dream. Yeah, but I didn't want to tell everybody how bad I wanted to be a stand-up comedian. But yeah, that was the guise. I studied at Dalhousie University. I took the health degree there, and then I was like, okay. But I guess that's the thing. If you moved to Toronto, then I would have had this stand-up comedy thing, but it would have definitely been a hobby. It probably would have become definitely secondary to a job that I would have, and maybe less realistic. Maybe it would have taken some of the passion out of it. So I think it was a huge advantage for me to just be a backpacking fuckwit Canadian, just happy to be, seeing the world and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden this opportunity, or I considered it an opportunity, of this stand-up comedy club just appearing before me. Like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you made it an opportunity. I mean, you took advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah, it was absolutely all I did. So, because that also meant like I was at that club every night, so when my friends became less who was at the hostel with me, and they became who was hanging out at the comedy club with me. And that's how your friendships evolve. It's kind of cool when you're a young comic and you're like, all right, you guys love this as much as me, so we are going to just do this a lot. This is going to be great.
When you're looking for that 5 minutes, that 10 minutes, where are you finding inspiration? I mean, I know you look into your own life a lot for your material.
Yeah, I just wrote a piece this morning that I think is going to be really funny. I'm trying to remember what it was. But I think, well, when you start off, you're pretty naive. So I have to admit, I just did jokes about like pop stars and music and whatever my 21-year-old, faux frustration was at the time. But outside of that, you just gotta notice when a moment is awkward and go, this is, if you put this into words, it'll be hilarious. If you can paint this story, what exactly is happening now?
You definitely seem to gravitate to the awkward. Those strange moments, those awful, for anyone else, it would be embarrassing as hell.
Yeah. I love a social story that I think everybody can relate to, or give us some escapism. So yeah, I like the storyteller comedy. That's the style that I fell in love with, more than say shock comedy or the one-liners, I love the pun guys. But I knew that was never going to be me. Yeah,
I mean, right now I'm just thinking of, you have the bit about watching hockey in the hotel room.
Yes, the awkward hotel story.
It's awkward after awkward after awkward.
Yeah,
but as you're saying, it's not dropping a joke and puns and things. It's it's a build, and a nice payoff. Yeah,
a payoff that I always tell people is I never thought that would be a payoff. The way the piece was actually written, like the way the whole story is written, that was just a throwaway line one night, and people laughed. And I swear, I still don't understand why that is a climactic laugh when all these other ones that happens. I had all these other ideas for how to put a button on this story, but it was the one that works is not the one I thought would.
To me, it's that relatability, right? Like, it's that horror everybody feels inside is when that last moment could happen to them. At least if something embarrassing happens and nobody really knows about it, and you control that story about how you're going to tell them, people can get behind that.
Oh, exactly.
When someone else is telling their version of the story too, you're like, fuck.
Yeah.
Is there any situations where you find yourself without ideas and doubting you'll ever have any good ideas?
But yeah, all the time. I think that's. I think everybody has doubt all the time. I can think of all kinds of different reasons. I mean, sometimes when you like, I'm releasing a new album this week, and sometimes that gap that comes between finishing something and kind of knowing what you want to do next, but you haven't started doing it yet, or like I said, like my comedy, like because I'm releasing an album, I'm trying to find new ideas. Like, where's my new like a hotel story or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
And so you do have that little bit of doubt of like, well, maybe I won't find one, or maybe can't. Maybe that's it. Maybe that was the best I could do.
I'm done. I've peaked.
So there is a little vacuum sometimes after you finish something. There's a little vacuum, and then then the artistic process has highs and lows.
Well, so what do you do to kind of confront this and hopefully conquer it?
What, like things like writer's block, or trying to think of what you want to create?
Yeah, like, I mean, if you're waiting for that idea.
Yeah, you just have to get your mind off of things. So, sometimes you're just locked in too much. But I live in Los Angeles, so we're not far. I got my mountain bike is my main mode of transportation in Los Angeles, which is crazy. But yeah, you find that as soon as you tend to, like, I got a gym membership as well. Sometimes something just comes to me sitting in the steam room after I've sat in front of my computer and I've tried to work something out and I can't get to it, and then it'll be so simple if you just can find a place where you can stop, change venue, get your ass in the steam room, and wait for it to come to you.
So ultimately, what are you hoping to achieve? Is there a pinnacle you're trying to reach?
World peace. So I want nothing short of world peace.
Will it happen because of this new record? Do kids call it records anymore?
What? Yeah, you can call them a record.
I call them. It's still recorded. It's a record.
I call it an album.
An album. That's
an
equally
album.
Useless. Yeah.
A record. It's a body of work.
What's a new body of work? Yeah,
there you go. It's called Live Before Lockdown, and it's a series of sets that I've done in front of different audiences around the world in the last few years. And I think it's because it's the ideal way to get an album together in quarantine. To go, I've got that set from Sweden that I'd love to release, and then Boston was good, Calgary. We got some stuff from London, Sydney, and Glasgow. I think that might be. That's probably almost all of them. I might have missed one other, but yeah, and we just pieced all of them together.
The magic of editing.
So it's fun. Well, I mean, we didn't edit them together. We've just put these sets in front of these audiences together on the album. It'd be really weird if it was just edited together. If I'm just talking to a Swedish audience, and then all of a sudden I'm making fun of the Red Sox.
Yeah, cut it by joke, cut it by line. So. Yeah. Is this album a project that you started during this whole lockdown time?
Yeah, it was. I mean, this is all a basis of. So I've got like some Zoom recorders. I got two Zoom recorders, one of the big ones, and I've just been traveling with them. Now, I was actually using it mostly to work on my show, like to develop my Edinburgh show, for example. When I just performed at the Edinburgh Festival, so we recorded all those shows as well. And I was intending to record the album, so I'm was using it to workshop ideas to see what was going right with some jokes. But in the end, because I was supposed to be in Manila right now, I was going to do a tour of Asia, and that's where I was going to get the last recording and hopefully do like a live from Kuala Lumpur or something. That's what I was aiming for. But all of that opportunity went away. And so as I was talking with my producer, it was Robin, Robin Collins, and we just dreamt up this idea, like, well, why don't, we've got all these recordings now, since we can't go anywhere and stand-up comedy may never exist again, why don't we create a body of work out of all these sets that we had? So I forced him to listen to my voice for whatever that was, probably 100 hours.
I think that's fair. You had to listen to his voice, I'm sure.
So there you go. I'm glad you made the trade sound fair. I feel like poor fella, poor fella. So he listened to all the hours and pulled out his favorite routines, and boom, we've thrown it together on a piece of work,
on a body of work.
It's become a body of work.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. You said you're working with Robin, who's your producer. You've got management. What do they do for you? Like, what does a manager actually do for you?
I think regardless of everybody's titles in the business, sometimes, because sometimes I blur the lines between manager and agent. But I always think if they're taking that 10% or whatever, what they really do is they're like that support system that they're saying your name where you don't have to, kind of thing. They're so they're spreading the word. They're on your side. They're kind of another, because you can't expect them to do everything for you. You have to have some initiative and do things yourself, pursue projects yourself, do all of that. They're another, what is it, string to your bow? Is that the saying? Arrow. They're another arrow in your quiver. So that's what they do. Like, I know that my manager's out there trying to find opportunities for me, sending me emails every now and then, like, oh, hey, there's this thing that's happening here, or getting me a meeting with somebody. So they do stuff like that that helps you, have a broader reach in your career.
But you have to do it.
Yeah, you have to remember that for the most part, everybody involved in your career works for you. So you can't, like, even if you say you're a band that signs a record deal, you don't go in there and go, oh, great, we signed a record deal, we work for them now. You go, great, we signed a record deal, let's make some opportunities and put these guys to work. That's the way you've got to think about it, because everybody's not you. So you've got to do you so that everybody sees what you want to do.
Well, and I think a lot of artists, no matter what the medium, they're so focused on making the art, whatever it is, the comedy, making the painting, making the thing, that they think that's their sole job, and that anybody else that signs on for a piece, that's their job. You go get me this job. You go get me into that gallery. You go get me into that on that tour. And to a certain extent, that's the clearest division, as a lot of people would expect it to be. But the reality is that, the artist is the fire that is propelling this thing. You're the gas, ultimately, in the vehicle. Right?
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of metaphors I've used. Yeah, we're the middleman. We're the middleman of our own product. But yeah, I guess the artist does the creating, and you always need connections and opportunities that are given you by people who have different experiences. I mean, that's going to be another benefit to me having a manager anyway, because I've only lived here in Los Angeles for like 4 or 5 years. After living in Britain for 15. So I know the British scene. I just did a British tour last year, and I didn't need my Los Angeles manager to help me with that. But here in Los Angeles, I haven't been here for long, so he's been here since the 80s. So I think, so he'll probably have his ear to the ground for certain things.
When you came over about 5 years ago, you came over, is it with Jim, to work on his show getting going?
No, we were flatmates. We were like roommates in Manchester, but I'd say Jim's probably lived here for about 11 years. He moved over, I'd say maybe 11 years, maybe it was 2010. So I was still in London. We lived down the street from each other in London at that point. We each had separate one bedrooms, but in the same little neighborhood. Because I think, we had moved from Manchester back to London, but maybe I went somewhere else first or something, I think, and we all just got our own little places in London. Or maybe we were just mature men by now. We were mature men with our own lives.
You didn't need to live together.
We all wanted to have our own little place. We had girlfriends, and we had, maybe we tried to grow up for that brief period. And then Jim, got a phone call from Dr. Hollywood. And
he gave you a buzz, like when it was time to get writing on his show. He gave you a call and said, I want this guy. And
no, not at all. Like I said, the wheels were. You have to make these decisions so that you can be ready for an opportunity. You don't make these decisions because you get offered an opportunity. And that's a really important thing to always remember. Because, like I said, so he moved. I'm going to say 2009 now. I think because he moved. Felt like he was gone for a long time, and I was talking to him in 2012. We were just having this conversation, and he said, "Hey, why don't you think about coming over?" And then I said, "Yeah, maybe that's a good idea." So then I had to get all the paperwork going, and whenever my approval came through, maybe it was like 2014 or whatever, and then I come over. I think I officially lived here 2016. So you kind of had to do all those things, and then finally, and the show happened in late 2017, I think, or early 2017. So I was just lucky. He didn't make me any promises or anything. I was just lucky that I did all that work to put myself in place when all of a sudden my friend had that show, and I was able to interview for it, and do all the do all the packets and stuff, all the writing examinations that you got to do, and off we went. So yeah, so I mean, I'm sure it must happen for some people the other way. Like you must have like great friends who live in different countries who go, I want you, I'll sponsor your visa. So that's just it. You can get a sponsored visa. I did not have a sponsored visa.
Yeah, you were doing your own work.
Yeah, you can't do it either way. I think a lot of people get the sponsorship visas, which is fantastic as well. I mean, that must mean that you have a corporation or whatever looking out for you right away. Like you get a Disney sponsorship or something, you'll probably be on an ABC show quickly. But you can do it independently. I just got my own lawyer, and I got my own. Just had to show my own body of work, and eventually got my passport. Yeah, the lawyers will be great. They'll make it look like you've done a lot more work, but they'll get like little things, like little tiny adverts that were in like the Penny Saver newspaper or whatever, and they count that as publicity, and that'll be bam. That'll be, oh, look, he had coverage in the Penny Saver in July 2004.
Hey, whatever works.
Yeah, well, that's how that is how it works. Because if they manage to find another 50 of those, they just pad out your phone book of experience there, and you got like 140-page Bible. That looks like you've been kicking ass.
Let me ask you about a typical day, because right now when we started talking, it's 11 a.m. on a Monday. You're a comedian. I got to ask you, what the hell are you doing awake at 11 a.m. on a Monday?
I don't know if that's true about comedians anymore. I mean, we can be lazy all day, but
you're awake while being lazy?
Well, I mean, I think we can live like we don't feel pressure to get a lot done. I mean, I do get up on time. I mean, I did write 3 years. I wrote for 3 years on a network TV show, and that was a quick way to start appreciating getting up at 8 a.m., I guess, because you knew you had to be somewhere and writing for something specific at 10 a.m. So if you don't get your ass out of bed at 8 a.m., listen to a little rock and roll, make a nice little breakfast, before getting on your bike for your 15-minute ride to the studio. Yeah. So I don't know. That's with the invention of laptops as well, we can do a lot of work from bed too. So I don't know.
What a world we live in, what a future.
All you regular people out there are only just learning like what quarantine is like, but comedians live it all the time.
Yeah, this is just fine for you, right? You're used to working at home. You're working on your own, working on the road.
I hate to say it, but I am a little bit. I actually had, other than this tour, I'm supposed to be touring now in May, but March and April, I actually had a lot of home work to do. I hate to say it, but things like taxes. I was writing 2 scripts, had to get my taxes done, and we were working on this album. We started working on this album when the quarantine hit. So I had all these things kind of keeping me busy anyway. But May has been different because I was supposed to be, like I said, I was supposed to be in the Philippines right now. I was going to do shows in Bali and Kuala Lumpur, and then of course in Manila. And so now I'm trying to fill that in my head, and it's it'll hopefully manifest itself on something good. If not, it'll become sleeping in. You're right. It'll become sleeping in.
I've noticed I'm sleeping in. It's creeping. It's creeping.
Yeah, I know. At the start of the quarantine, like I said, I was really busy, and I had a rule for myself that there was no computers between 11 a.m. and 12 a.m. But that was because I was actually getting up and starting doing emails and connecting with people from 8:30, and then you get stuck into work, and then you're socializing with people. You're doing all this stuff, and it was really beneficial for me to go, okay, it's 11 a.m. No matter what I haven't achieved, it's not going to be any different by 12. So just shut everything off, and...
What does that do for you? I mean, were you grabbing some lunch, you're hitting a bike or something like that?
Yeah, or during quarantine, you're just doing a little workout, or something just to get your mind off things. And you do find that nothing's changed. It's you get FOMO when you're working. I think that's the problem. If you're networking with people and you're organizing things, you're afraid to walk away from it. But it's hard to pound it into your brain that it won't be any different in an hour. If they've messaged you, they'll be fine with not hearing from you for an hour and 20 minutes. Whatever it takes to get to that message, you'll be okay. So it's important to remember that.
There won't be a comedy emergency that needs to be attended to right now.
It can get bad if you're on your butt all day staring at your computer. And you do. That's what. Hey, I'm all for the 4-day work week, because I bet you it extends to that. I bet you we as humans, we will accomplish just as much in a 4-day work week as we would in a 5-day work week. It's just that we've trained ourselves.
Yeah, it's just something we've gotten used to.
Yeah.
Especially with the cell phones, and you're never actually away from the office. You're never away from your work. You're always in touch. It's enough to make you crazy. Like, you just want to literally shut the thing off, throw the thing out.
I wouldn't be surprised too if after all this, the quarantine experience that everybody's having, I wouldn't be surprised if some employers do realize that people are efficient from home. Like if I ran a business or a company that required a lot of online, whatever you define this clericalness with your computer, if you gave all of your staff Wednesdays from home kind of thing, but they just had to be around their computer has to be on because they're on the clock technically, I bet you people would still be just as efficient.
Yeah. Oh, for sure there would be. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's some people that don't operate well in that environment, but they'll learn. There's lots of people that don't work well in an office.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Yeah, some crazy people would be even better.
Yeah.
They'd be even better if they only had to work from home.
What kind of advice do you got to somebody who wants to get in the comedy game, wants to get up on stage and do their first 5?
Well, you gotta do it. You gotta try to spend less time working up to it and get on with it.
Even if you bomb?
Even if you bomb. I still remember how I felt like in the time leading up to my first real spot, and I remember thinking, well, I'm about to find out. I'm gonna find out, and if I'm not the guy, then it's time to move on. But that'd be the worst feeling. Carrying around that feeling for years is the worst. And so if you want to try something, if you've got it that eating away at the back of your head, like for real, it's like right there, you better listen to that and do it, because if you suck at it, then you just go, okay, good, I can stop listening to that.
Well, do you think you really would have stopped if you had found out you sucked?
Yeah, I imagine if I felt, if it wasn't, you wouldn't enjoy it. If you sucked, you wouldn't, you gotta, so it's kind of a loaded question in a while. Like if I knew that it was something that you could get good at, like that you could see, if you could see that you were going to get good at it, then don't
quit. Glimmer of hope.
But if you're like, I am not good. Like I do not ski anymore, and the reason why I don't go skiing is, it's not because I'm good at it.
There's no shot in hell you're getting better.
Yeah, I'll never enjoy this. I'll be stuck in the learning phase forever. I don't think skiing is for me.
So where can people find you?
You can on the internet, JJ Whitehead and JJ Whitesnake on some social media. But if you plug my name in, I'm sure you'll be able to track me down and have a listen to my new album. It's coming out in a little bit.
Looking forward to it. Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing how you make a living.
Thanks, boss, man. Thank you for having me.
Subscribe to Making a Living Show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Podbean. Making a Living Show is brought to you by me, but if you'd like it to be brought to you by you, then become a patron of the program at makingalivingshow.com. There's a button there that will take your money and give it to me. You can find me at robylevy.com. Thanks for listening.